allergist was out of town, and my former husband said that he could give me my shot. He did, and instead of doing it subcutaneously, he actually ruptured a blood vessel. And within 2 minutes, I closed my eyes and remember nothing until I opened my eyes in hospital. With my eyes closed, a lot happened. At one point, I was watching myself from which appeared to be more than above the ceiling. It felt like I was through the ceiling, but looking through the ceiling. It was an unusual perspective. And looking at myself, wondering why the nurses and doctors were doing what they were doing to me, but also feeling very calm and very peaceful, and not feeling frightened, and being somewhat detached yet connected. There was a specialist there who came into the room and immediately put a shot into the arm where I had had my shot, and a shot into my heart. And I remembered feeling things physically happening, them tearing my clothes off it, moving me, and then becoming absolutely separate from that. And I don't think I even felt scared. There was a place of just not being present for myself at all, just being absolutely detached. Then my feeling when I was looking at myself and everything that was happening was probably the most relaxed, gentle, sublime, peaceful feeling I've ever had in this life. And again, I don't know that there are words to totally explain that. My next, after I went through looking at them doing this to me, I realized that I was in no pain. And I remembered before I became unconscious, I was in a lot of pain. I was gasping for breath, and these muscles here were hurting a lot because I was really grasping, and this was very sore before I became unconscious. And in fact, at one point, I know that I'm not sure if it's died or whether I passed into a place of close to death, but I did hear the physician saying, and he was holding 2 circular discs in his hand and was about to place them on my body. And it was just seconds after being given another shot. And he said, "Clear." And all of a sudden I heard this machine going beep. And he said, "We don't need to do it. We've got her, we've got her, we've got her." And all of a sudden they calmed down. And the next feeling for myself was rushing in a tunnel, a black tunnel. I was coming in through this tunnel, and there was lots of lights all around me. And it started off at a fast pace, but by the time I got to the end of the tunnel, it was going so quickly that I felt uncomfortable. And I felt like I thudded back onto the bed, that my body actually bumped back into the hospital bed. Not the hospital bed, but where I was lying. And the progression of the pain started to come back as I was progressing down the tunnel. And I know that at one point I saw a doctor working at pressing on my heart. And my chest was hurting so much because they had really pulled and pushed and had to do everything that they needed to do. And I felt exhausted by the whole episode, and yet scared to even say that this had happened, because I was still thinking, did this happen? Was I seeing myself? And the first time I really opened my eyes, I looked into the eyes of the doctor, and he looked very upset and said, what happened. And I knew the question was not about what had happened to get me to hospital, but he knew I felt that there were some unspoken things happening. And I said, I was watching myself from the ceiling. He said, I know, I lost you. And then we never talked about it again. But I feel like I had an opportunity to really look at myself and say, what do I do now? I still have to work with it day in, day out. I mean, that's something that's just a part of who I am as a person. When we are born, we come into this world innocent and can take away so much. So why at the end do we not come in and say this is an opportunity? I mean, it just feels so clear to me. Death is, I don't feel, is something to be afraid of. I think, to me, I would be more afraid of not dealing with my children or my husband or my siblings and helping them even with it, saying, yeah, I'm dying. But let's not just sit here and do the mourning now. I mean, let's go and do some things together. Let's go out and yeah, I'm going to miss you, but it just feels like you could grab hold of so much at that time. And that is clearly how we can do our life before we know we're dying. It doesn't need, why does it have to wait till then? There are questions that I've asked myself, and I just don't feel that there are answers that I can give myself, other than there was an unbelievable calmness that came out of it for myself, and that has gone through my life since then in many different ways. Even in how I thought about my mother's death. My mother committed suicide, and I had a lot of issues that had been unfinished, but my experience then made me feel that I could look at her death in a different way. That it was, I think I became more understanding of that there is a plan, and that we're all a part of a plan, and that death doesn't need to be an end, and that death could be a real, if we know that we're dying, that there could be a lot of preparation done for that, a lot of talking with people, a lot of safety, a lot of specialness that could happen at that time. I mean, I came back knowing that I had a lot of unfinished business. A lot of unfinished business, and that at any time I could leave, and it was my choice to do something about that unfinished business. And I tried to do that as much as I can. Direct result of that incident, I ended up divorcing my husband. It became very clear that that was not where I needed to be. I was not happy. It wasn't the relationship. And I went out on a limb in a lot of different stages of the choices that I made were very unusual for what I perceived as my personality. I wasn't a risk taker. I don't think I'm a real risk taker, but even now, but I think that I made choices as a result of that, realizing that we can't just take every day that we have here for granted. We could leave at any minute. And I've done a lot of reading and a lot of work with different peoples who have who think similarly, and I didn't know that there was another environment out there of people who really talked about this in a different way. It opened my mind. I've since found some very special people who also have been concerned about talking about issues like this, because it's not really the accepted norm. But it feels so right when I talk about it. And there's something that's just goes through my whole body that there's no logic to it. It's just right. And I worked as a volunteer in an emergency room in a local hospital, and I have seen some people near death. And I have heard doctors and nurses saying They're discombobulated. They don't know where they are. But those people are actually talking with people. And they're talking with parents, and they may be in their 60s or 70s, and they're talking with as if they've regressed in life, but I don't think they have. I think they're meeting somebody. I think there's a transitional place. I remember one night there was one man who did die, and he told me that he met his sister. And instead of me just patting his hand, and I asked him what was she saying, and he told me. And it was as if he came out of where he was and looked at me like, oh, thank God somebody's listening to me. And there's more to this than I know, but instinctively I just know that there is much more.